Erik,
Drew, how are you doing?
how's it go? I'm doing really good. I'm doing really good. I'm actually battening down the hatches for this big storm coming through the Northeast right now.
Oh, okay.
So it should be good. And it's not going to hit us too hard. For us, it'll just be cozy. I'll bake. It'll be chill.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Tropical storm. I'm
Yeah,
good. I'm
bake at the
good.
tropical storm. Yeah, that's the Northeast for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The smoke is rolling in here out west, as usually
Mm,
happens in mid-August. So we're starting to get a little smoky and hazy. But other than
mm.
that, it's great.
Could be
Middle of
worse. Could be
summer.
worse. Yeah,
Yeah.
when I can't grill, I bake. So I'll do that. And yeah, here we go. I wanted to ask you about something that has nothing particularly to do with the weather, but feels like it's as ubiquitous as the weather, which is CDP technology. It's everywhere, right? At the enterprise level, anyway. Maybe not in people's everyday lives, but I think there's a lot of confusion out there as to SAP's CDP offering specifically. So, let's start there. What is SAP CDP exactly?
Yeah. The CDP is a system to really focus on unifying all the customer records in a central place.
You're answering a
That's the
better question
goal.
than the one I asked, real quick. Yeah, what is a CDP in the first place? That's actually important.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's all about unification of the
yeah.
customer data. SAP's product, as well as that, and focuses on the activation of that because the CDP is useless if you can't get that data out again, which seems to be the challenge. Where we're seeing a lot of struggles is customer records everywhere, that customer record replication across these different stacks of
Hmm.
systems. And that's the function of the CDP, is to try and centralize that, right? Try and get that information. So it doesn't matter which system is using it. We have accurate information about the customer. And the CDP's goal is to enable that activation across all these systems. So a good CDP will have a lot of connectors to get that data out, right? Or support kind of real-time querying of it. And then, of course, on the inbound side, we have to be able to ingest all of the data and events that might occur to kind of help that unification. So there's a bunch of additional features, right? SAP CDP has that to bring information in, helps with kind of that golden customer identification, deduplication, single record, and then has the ability to kind of help it export. And those are the main things that we want to look at, right? That goes beyond just a database table for a record about a customer, right? That's really the focus of the CDP. And I think SAP's CDP strategy is super sound at the moment, and the execution of that. And the industry is struggling with that concept on how to bring that data singularly and use it across the organizations. So
Five years
that's what
ago,
we're seeing.
yeah. 5 years ago, you heard a lot about the concept of the golden record, I think. Not that you don't hear it now, but it was like the thing people talked about. So a CDP is how you get there, or it's an important part of how you get there, right?
Yeah,
It's not just
that
you
was
need to
the
make sure.
industry
Yeah,
answer. You're right.
right,
That was
right.
the industry answer to that exact struggle, where we saw, CRM maybe 10, 15 years ago. CRM was supposed to be a little bit that, became a little bit more kind of service sales oriented. So CDP is really that answer today for that.
Do you think it's a better answer?
I think it is. Yeah. I mean, CRM is so focused around the workflow of sales that it felt, as technologists when we were using that, it was not providing a kind of single record and then activation outbound. So what I think is interesting about CDP where it's at today is it's focused more on kind of data foundation and fundamentals, which
Mm.
is great, right? That's where you want it versus CRM was focused more on the application side. And so that's where it fell down, right? It was more about kind of workflow of activities, but focused more around sales. And so it really wasn't around that bringing the data technically into a central place and to allow activation. And that's where that kind of enterprise architecture piece comes in, and that's where CDP fits in. SAP CDP, being more of that cloud SaaS-based product with default connectors, fairly light to deploy, can help kind of extend and enhance. Like we talk a lot about Emarsys these days, you and I, around marketing execution. CDP allows sort of additional data centralization use cases, right? Where Emarsys is light CDP, maybe doesn't have as much on the activation end, but it is able to do some of that unification, which is great. And that's needed on kind of that golden marketing contact record
Let me
as
paraphrase you
well.
though, right? So like if you want to do a bunch of marketing stuff, you can use Emarsys as your CDP.
Yeah.
The time you need a discrete CDP would be if you want a golden record that perhaps does flow directly into your marketing system, your commerce system, whatever, but that's the thing, it does more than one thing, right? Something other than those use cases where if you've got a commerce and a marketing system in sync, maybe that's good enough and you don't need a CDP per se. When do
Mhm.
you, right? Like what else might you need to do?
Well, I think you just nailed it, right? Is if you're focused on maybe a first phase around marketing kind of record identification, like Emarsys is going to handle that and it's going to
Mhm.
give you that. If you're focused more broadly around the problem of I've got discrete customer data everywhere and it feels messy in my organization, that's where that CDP can come in and provide that clue. And that's what I was saying about being kind of technical foundations. And that's where you need to focus on. And I won't say kind of names. There's certain products that have been sold all over the place, right? But that activation has been the challenge, right?
Mm.
Either it's not as real time for events coming in and changes, and then B, it's very hard to activate that data to additional systems for not just marketing, but other type of execution and access. That's the key. So a CDP to be successful, it has to be able to bring the data in flexibly, has to be able to ingest that quick, provide some features for segmentation, lookup identification, and be able to activate it outbound. If you have those use cases, long-winded answer, but if you have those use cases that span beyond just marketing, that's where the CDP is going to be very useful around that unification.
What do you want to look out for in that case, right? Isn't there a danger of putting yourself into a situation where you're duct taping a lot? By which I mean, if you start relying on a single system for a so-called golden record, that isn't the system that
Mhm.
actually does the execution, right?
Right,
So you want to
right.
make sure that it's plugged into the systems that do, right? Otherwise, you end up in a situation where instead of the CDP working for you, you're working for the CDP. We've definitely seen businesses in that
Yeah,
position. How do you avoid
yeah.
that?
Well, I think you're right, but I think you'll know that you're going to have challenges with that data movement anyways today.
Sure.
And so if the CDP will be able to solve that by kind of bringing in a standardized way of connecting and unifying that data. Okay, check in the box, right? We have that. And now we're solving at least that problem where we might have multiple systems that don't have consistent ingestion processes. That's what I was saying about technical foundations. So if we get that in place, and then around execution, for it to be successful, like you said, for us not to be working for it, it has to provide that outbound. It really has to have some ability to bring that out in a way that's ease, where we're not, custom trying to work around the limitations of it. Then I think we won't be working for the CDP, which is a really good term. I like that, and I think you're right. We've seen that a little bit. Businesses working for the CDP versus the CDP working for it.
It's a danger with any system you really really rely on, right? Which is of course,
Yeah,
like, it's unavoidable to at least skirt the edge of the problem because you want to rely on systems, you want them to do useful work. That just makes sense.
yeah,
But yeah, I think you're nailing it, right? That you have to plan out exactly what the ins and outs, literally and figuratively, of that system are going to be, make sure that
yeah,
it's fit to purpose, and sort of like, before you plug everything into one system, make sure that each of those discrete connections has a purpose within your business, right? You don't want to just, like, you don't want it to become a, what do people say about certain programming languages, a Swiss Army chainsaw, right? Like
mm,
something that is
mm,
used for everything but is unwieldy and not actually fit to purpose for everything. You want to use it intentionally. You want to use it in a way that's actually going to provide value. Yeah,
yeah,
fair.
yeah, and solve those specific use cases that you're challenged with, because, like, I mean, the reality of the centralization is because you obviously have a use case or problem that's not being solved, right? So you're
Totally.
trying to centralize. So if you're driving it by that, you're going to be just
Yeah, makes sense to me.
fine.
This was
Awesome.
helpful. Thanks,
Yeah,
Erik.
this was great. Thanks for the chat, Drew.
Yeah, totally.